How's it going, YouTube? Coming today with another video, and today, guys, what I have to bring to you is technical play. Now, technical play is the foundation of Yu-Gi-Oh! And exactly how you get better. So basically what that entails is knowing how to play through a board, knowing your opponent's deck better than them, knowing how to break a board, and knowing where to interact with your opponent. So a lot of people have varying definitions on what this is. So my own definition of this is the ability to know a matchup to its core. Knowing if you do A, there's a very high chance that your opponent will do B. So essentially, like, if I activate this card, I know that my opponent will probably do this thing to either negate this card or interact with me. These are things that are very not talked about, and it needs to be, because specifically technical play is something that can make you win so much more if you understand multiple lines of play just alone. So there's always one thing that you can do to someone, but if you can find like a second way, if they're prepared for you to negate one thing, but you go ahead and negate something else that's super impactful, a lot of times it catches them so off guard because they had to change their combo for you that they just lose. Technical play at the end of the day is something that I've been focusing on now for like years. So I'm going to be doing today's video as Striker because a lot of people come back to my channel for Striker since I've been playing it for so long. That's what I'm most known for. If you want to see me do this with other decks, definitely let me know. Striker is probably one of the hardest decks to play because you have to be like technically sound perfect to actually play the deck well. I'm actually using real interactions today that I've seen in regionals or YCSs in my own games. These are all matches that I've won and won just incredibly by technical play alone. So I do hope that you guys enjoy that kind of content. I know a lot of people are asking me for like live games of Striker. It's kind of hard to do sometimes, but I'm finding a way to do it, especially because like you can't always like record at locals, and I don't have like a laptop to record off of as well. So I'm definitely trying to find more ways to do that. I do want to take a moment, though, and just thank you all so much for almost 3K subs. That is so insane. I just hit 2K, and I'm already on my way to 3. You guys are just so incredible, and I honestly just love that I can do the content that I love. I just want to be able to teach as much as possible and show you guys how to play the game better and really just how to improve, because this game is so much fun, and I played it for so long that I just really want to find other people to get to a very competitive level, because once you hit that level, the game just becomes so much more broad and so much more fun. Again, today's video, we are using Strikers, so I'm just going to hop right into my first slide here on how to improve your technical play. And then at the end, I have a series of slides in one matchup that I'm going to let you apply all the methods and then see if you can break it yourself. And then I'm going to be talking to you about how I broke the board too. All right, so hopping right into the first one here is never blind MST. You don't know what's in the back row. You don't know if you're going to be swinging into an IO or Judgment. You just kind of have to play around with the most that you can. Even if you're playing against like Eldlik, right? Like if they have like 3 back row, they are going to have like Sanguine, Haquero, and Conch. So you got to know that one of those aren't real. Like Sanguine doesn't do anything outside of like summon the monster that actually allows them to use the other 2. So you can either look at it if you open Asher Bell that, okay, they have Haquero and Conch, but I just Asher Bell the Sanguine and they just lose. Or like if you can control where the Golden Lord goes and the other 2 trap cards don't really do anything. So there's a lot to go with that. So here we're talking about a situation where my opponent actually activated Duality. I know he has a Judgment, and so it's somewhere back here. So we're going to figure out how we want to play around this. I do have Double Twin. The only time that you will ever blind MST is if you have like Twin and a Cosmic, Twin and a Twin, Twin and an MST, and you always lead with MST or Cosmic if you have it. Never lead with a Twin. I just don't want to see you like Twin discard 1 and then get hit by a Judgment. That's terrible. Always lead with a Cosmic or an MST. But again, you never want to blind MST unless you have information as to at least what one of the cards are. And I don't mean the fact that I know a Judgment right now. Wait for at least 1 to activate. So this is games 2 or 3. He knows I'm playing Striker. So right away, he's going to go ahead and flip Gozen Match in the draw or standby phase. Going into my main phase 1, you have to try to find the responsive back row. So I'm not going to MST or Twin or Cosmic the Gozen. I'm going to be looking at the other 3 because I know a Judgment is somewhere back there. So I'm going to be going ahead and taking a shot, because if you Twin on a Judgment and they're going first and like you already have cards still, you're twinning them, a lot of times they just won't change the chain the Judgment if you hit the Judgment. So I'm trying to find out where this is at. So you kind of have to take a little bit of a gamble here. It's 2 out of 3, so it's pretty good odds. you're going to go ahead and twin 2 cards. I ended up twinning this one and this one. And again, a lot of times that if you twin back row where there's a judgment, if you hit the judgment, a lot of times they won't flip it because they don't want to die, because it puts them down to 4k. So it's a very hard chance, unless the other back row is like super real. And that's a really good read if you do have like another twin, that if they judgment this, then you absolutely cut the other back row with the Gozen, because that one's going to be super real and they wanted to protect that. So we're going to be going into the next one here. I ended up hitting Judgment and Conch. So that means that the other one just wasn't real again, and I did hit the Judgment, so that just means that they didn't flip it because they didn't want to die. Very understandable. And then they had IDP and Gozen when I ripped the other twin. So you have to assume 2 back row are real. So these 2 were the only real ones against me. These 2 really aren't that great. So I always assume, no matter what I'm going up against back row wise, I always assume that at least 2 of the cards are real, because even if you're going against like Guru and they have like Final Battle, that card just isn't that real. So you have to assume that the only real cards are like Floodgates and like Judgments or Strikes, right? So only 2 are real, and that's how I go about breaking back row. I don't blind MST, I wait for information, and then I try to hit the responsive card. And then once the responsive card's out of the way, you can freely twin, because like once you know the judgment's gone, they're not going to like stop your twin, because they obviously don't have IO, and they probably don't have another judgment. Especially because he added a judgment off of the duality, so that means he probably didn't have the second one, or else he would have probably added something different. Moving on, though, we have Knowing Obscure Rulings. Now, this actually got me a win at a regional, because there are certain interactions with Ray that you just have to know, and one of them is versus Crescendo. So I activated multi-roll, and I normaled Ray, and then I go multi-roll effect target Ray, chain Ray. He chains Crescendo because he thought it would banish my Ray, but since the Ray is in a new place from where it activated, it won't be banished. So then he has Crescendo now in his grave. I have Ray in my grave. This is where we are going to go ahead and always check the graveyard. He has a Dingirsu in there. I'm going to activate the Hornet Drone, which is going to prompt the Symbol Skeleton, and then I will prompt the Shark Cannon to banish the Dingirsu, and then go ahead and summon Hayate. From there, you can also figure that we can see if you Hornet Drone, that he will just summon the Dingirsu right away. So you can always do this first and just allow him to summon the Dingirsu. But he will send your multi-roll. So then off the Kagari, you'll just add back the multi-roll, and then end phase, use Widow Anchor to target your own Shizuku. And then reset the Shark Cannon, since Shark Cannon's better against Orcust at this point. But there's always different plays that you can do like that as well. Just have to always be mindful of the graveyard, and making sure that you're always watching what they're doing. And then knowing obscure rulings like that are always so important, because Ray versus Crescendo is one thing that easily won me a lot of games in an Eternal format, which was Thunder, Orcust, and Striker. Honestly, one of my favorite formats of all time. So very, very important interactions. No cards will prompt negates. This is what I'm very big on. Things like multi-roll are number one always going to be prompting some kind of negate, because your opponent can no longer respond to you after you are able to resolve your multi-roll. So a lot of times if I'm going against like some kind of Dragoon variant, I personally would never activate Dragoon unless it threatened the Dragoon directly. So if they were something like Hida to go like a bigger link or whatnot, I would always try to like shut that down immediately. But I used multi-roll, and then my opponent used Dragoon effect to negate it, and then I was able to steal it with tactics. So you have to know your deck's weak points. So you're probably asking me, like, why would you show me such a like basic interaction? Like, obviously you just tactics the Dragoon. You have to understand your deck's weak points, because playing going first striker, a lot of people don't play talents, but you have to realize the fact that Dragoon is played by like most decks right now, and that if you don't have a main deck out for the Dragoon, then you're openly saying that it's okay for you just to lose to Dragoon off variants, which is actually just not correct. And playing tactics, it's really solid, especially if you're forced to go second and crack a board. It's very, very good. And then having the Dragoon on the board is just such a big presence right now that you almost always have to run the talents. And that goes into technical play, because technical play also dips into deck building. And that's something where you have to realize that you have to main deck things like talents to out cards that you just cannot out otherwise. And if you do, it has to be like a higher link monster. And so it's really hard to get monsters on the board when you're being stunted by a Dragoon that realistically only lets you last like 2 turns because of the pop and burn effect. So these are things that you really have to be aware of. And this is why I showed you this interaction here. Moving forward, though, we have prioritized cards that hurt the most. So what I mean by this is, so all these interactions are actually just like pulled from previous situations that I've been in. So he actually should have had like 2 cards in hand, but we were just like testing so many different scenarios here. So this was his board, and he had like a lot in the graveyard. But so he had Gozen, Savage, and Hot Red. The scariest card here is Gozen Match, like hands down, because I can't even go into a Link Monster. So I'm looking at my hand right now, and I'm like, all right, how do I prompt this? So this is a talents. So I go activate multi-roll, set talents. So this was a big thing to do here because, like, if I would have sent my talents here, I honestly wouldn't have been in a bad situation. I also have 3 spells engraved, but it's one of those things where, like, I really wanted the talents, but I was so big brained that I just knew that he would negate multi-roll because there's no way that he would just let me interact with him and just, like, basically not let him negate me, right? So I go set talents and then multi-roll my talents. So what's cool about this is he hot-redded my multi-roll, and now he thinks this card is just dead. So he's not going to play around this card because he thinks this card is like Metalful Fusion or something. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and use Afterburner to be able to clear this Gozen Match after I try to bait his Savage. So he's going to go ahead here and go Savage negate, and then I'm going to chain the Widow Anchor to negate his Savage, and then I'm going to basically steal his Hot Red here. His Gozen and his Savage are dead, and now I can just go ahead and freely attack for game. I have a 32k beat stick on my board and a 1500 Ray, and if I had like a hand trap in my graveyard, I could deal damage with Hot Red, bring back the hand trap, and if you are playing the Hulk line, you can go like Hulk and then like break a board that way as well. Which is also very, very cool. That's why I'm saying, like, you have to know your opponent's deck better than them because you need to know those types of interactions and what cards like Hot Red do. Another thing here is that we can go end phase and like reset Shark Cannon or like get it from the deck and then reborn his Hot Red to our board after we make like Zeke here, and then have a negate for him as well, which is really cool. Really nice interaction. Another thing too is that cards like Hot Red say you can only use this effect once per turn. So if you like tactics a Hot Red away from your opponent, then you can actually use the Hot Red to negate yourself because it becomes your copy of the card and you affects the player. So you'll be able to actually negate with that card, which is really nice as well to know. It's different for once per turns because that affects the card, but if it's you can, it affects the player. So that's really nice too. Now, this is for applying the methods that we've been shown so far. So looking at my hand, this was actually at a local, this was in the finals. This was a very, very cool interaction here. He has 2 unknown sets. We can only assume that one's Pandemonium. And then he has Drop and Bow. So pause the video real fast, try to figure out how the board was broken, and try to think about what all he could have here. Now that you've unpaused the video, though, let's go ahead and break the board and show you how I went about breaking this. So I'm looking at my hand right now, and I'm seeing Bell, and there's a Bow Wow. When he uses Bow Wow, it prevents his Prank Kid monsters from being destroyed by card effects. And I have an Afterburner, so I want to use that. So I'm probably going to go ahead and Bell the Bow. So that's really good too. I see a Tactics here, so we're going to go ahead and see what we can prompt. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Afterburner on the Dropsies because I'm assuming that he needs the Dropsy to go into the Butler, and hopefully you can draw out a Pandemonium here. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Afterburner. It drew out the Pandemonium just like that. He's going to be summoning 2 from the deck, and he has the Butler on the board. So from here, now we're going to go ahead and negate his Bow Wow that he just used with the Bell, which is really good too, because you're going to stop the effect that allows protection. From there, we're going to go ahead and Butler them with their own Butler, because we have no monsters on our board, so we can freely take the Butler with the Tactics, and we're going to basically use this to just destroy his Prank Kids, and then go ahead and summon Ray and go brrrrr. So this is things that you really have to think about because like a very complicated interaction here is just understanding how everything works together in conjunction, especially in Striker, because you always feel like you're playing from behind, but there's always multiple routes that you can take to just win games, and you really have to see those lines of play before they happen, because I don't want to see people who like lose a game, they're like, man, I could have done that. Because if you put in the amount of time testing that you really want to see out of yourself, then you should recognize these lines of play and know how to win. These are things that come from hours and hours of playtesting and just really things that will improve so much on your gameplay. So I do hope that you enjoy videos like this. This is actually a really fun video for me to make, because there's so many interactions that you can do in a certain game or in certain situations that can make or break your game. And these are things that you really just have to know. So again, I can do this with other decks. I just do this with a striker because it's probably my most comfortable deck. I have quite a few that I can play though, that pretty comfortably. But you guys know that I've been playing this deck for forever now. It's easily the best toolbox deck that we've ever gotten. And it's also the hardest deck to play. So if you're having a really hard time with technical play, pick up striker and start playing it, because it will make you a better player. So again, if you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and sub, like, comment. I really do appreciate all of you guys. My Discord is in the description below. My new Twitter is in the description below. Go ahead and follow that as well to build the community over there. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful night. I'll catch you guys all in the next video. Thanks.